Welcome to Western North London, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Swedish national team questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
You're so ready with that flag and everything. I
I
love
do. Because we all know Sweden's going to win the Euros, just so everyone knows.
Yes, all indications are they're going to win.
Undefeated, clean sheet.
Clean sheet. Can't even be stopped by Spain. Unstoppable. Exactly. Well, that's about as much as we can say about it so far.
I actually have a lot of good friends that are from Finland, and actually one or two that were at that Denmark-Finland game, funny enough. But they've been posting a lot of stuff about how, because this is their first major tournament ever, all their stuff is about how Finland is now the only team ever to be undefeated in Euros and World Cup major tournaments.
Never lost. You can't lose if you don't play.
Yeah, exactly. Officially, they've played game and have never lost.
That is a fact you cannot deny. What drink do you have in your hand?
Well, I'm drinking the Stemma, and it is what is the name? They hide the name on this one. It is the Citra Single Hop. It's a very boring name.
Oh.
Stemma is a local brewery here in Bellingham. They're newish. I want to say 2018, 2019 when they started up. Good beers. It's good. It's a great little IPA. It's actually an IPA I like. Isn't too overwhelming. Has like that perfect balance. I mean, I also tend to like Citra hops.
Right.
And their tap room, if you ever go to it, is really cool. If you're ever up here, it's definitely one you'll want to stop by. And I think they have distribution down in Seattle, so just keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, I'll have to. I like that can. It's pretty cool looking.
Oh, I mean, their artwork is all amazing. It's a very well, whoever started it had some money to start with, because as I said, the tap room is stellar, and then the all the labels and stuff is just well designed, and everything kind of goes together.
Cool. Like it. I am dipping back into my stash of Colossal Claude. So I had a couple more of these, so I might as well finish it off. I noticed on here it says dedicated to fishing stories. So if you want to tell some tall tales.
I have zero fishing stories. But have you ever made it out to the Rogue Brewery down there in Oregon?
I have not been to Rogue. I have been to Deschutes, but not Rogue.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, it's down on the coast. I'm forgetting what city, and I should know what city it's in. But I was down there, and the tap room is actually a really cool little tap room. And then they have a lot of like very specific to the tap room beers. They'll do their experimentals out of there. So if you get a chance, go check it out.
Yeah, I plan on going down to the Oregon coast later this summer, so I will have to see if that's on the way.
Yeah, that one and Fort George, if you're on the Oregon coast. Those are my two faves that are going that way.
Okay, so I need to look up my breweries ahead of time.
Yeah, there's a couple of good ones.
Maybe pick up a growler on the way.
Yeah, exactly. For the road.
Road growlers.
Yeah, that's totally legal.
Totally. Well, I was just excited that there's an In-N-Out on the way to the Oregon coast now. So I'm pretty excited about getting my fix. It's been a year.
So you don't take the Dick's Drive-In is better than In-N-Out side of things, or
I wouldn't even like. That's like, I don't know. It's apples and oranges to me. Like they both make burgers, but I don't know. They're very different in my mind.
Yeah, I never got onto that argument. I just see it's an argument, and I'm like, oh, okay. I just like good food. And
yeah, they both taste good.
Yep.
I can't complain. I don't get In-N-Out all the time. Yeah. I'd eat at Dick's once a week if I could, but
it's probably not great for your digestion and your figure.
Yeah, my girlish figure would just go away. Yeah, so on to Tim's bit. What you got this week?
So I don't know if you saw it, but there was a protester who parachuted into the France-Germany game earlier,
I missed seeing that game, unfortunately, but I had heard some people were injured. It was it was a whole thing.
Yeah, and I, not to glorify doing stupid stuff that gets other people's injured, but I do think it's kind of funny. So I was just wondering what would you have as your protest when you're going down on the parachute into, and what game would you parachute into?
Does it have to be a protest?
Doesn't
Or it
know.
could
What's
be
your
anything?
message? What would be your message as you're parachuting into what game?
Uh, I would obviously drop into an English game.
Mm-hmm.
I would, or England game, I should say. And I would slap the Western North London logo on a parachute and be like, "Listen to my podcast."
So you're doing shameless self promotion.
What a better way to get people's attention than to parachute into the middle of an England national game.
Well, how comfortable are you with heights?
Not that comfortable.
Neither am I. We could do a drone. We should do like I think it was like Croatia. It was Albania, Croatia. I want to say it was I believe it was a Balkan game where someone flew in a drone with the other team's flag or their flag and flew it into the stadium at one point, and then a player like jumped up and ripped it down and kicked the crap out of the drone.
I recall that. I don't know what game it was, but yeah, I do remember seeing that.
That's more my speed, where my body is not physically on the line, because apparently the guy actually did not come down well and was receiving medical attention.
Oh, oh!
I guess he hit the spider cam, and that's what the objects were that were falling.
Oh,
Yeah, the camera that's like on the ropes that like kind of zooms around the stadium.
Did not plan for that.
No, I don't
Couldn't
think
see
he
that
planned for
coming.
a lot.
Apparently. What was he protesting? Was that even clear?
Yeah, it was a Greenpeace. So it was said Greenpeace kick oil out. So it was anti-oil, which like I can kind of get behind, but I don't know. I think tagging that on like the way that they do the anti-racism is a little bit tacky, I think. And then also injuring people is not a great way to protest like that.
No, but it got attention. I don't think anybody's going to kick oil because of it.
You never know. Maybe somebody saw that and was like, I need to just sell my car.
Maybe the CEO of Shell or something was like, yes, this was the thing that tipped it over for me.
Shut it down. Just
shut it all down. Turn off the pumps. Yeah. Turn off the oil rigs.
Maybe he was
parachute happened.
Maybe he was just anti like cooking oil. Like maybe he was trying to like make a more fat-free life.
Oh yeah.
He didn't specify what type of oil.
You got to be specific.
Yeah, I know.
Kick crude oil. Kick motor oil. Kick.
Maybe he hates olive oil.
Olive oil. The Greeks were pissed.
Yeah, I know. The Greeks and the Italians
don't rope us into this. Okay. You can tell we don't have a lot to talk about. We're going long on oil. You did mention injuries, and one thing I did want to talk about a little bit was probably like the craziest moment of this whole tournament so far was Christian Eriksen going down.
Yeah.
Is that something you saw live, or did you just hear about it?
Yeah. So I was actually in bed. As I've mentioned, I have a lot of Finnish friends, so I kind of keep an eye on the Finnish national team, especially because it's such a big thing. But I wasn't really out of bed at that moment. I was kind of still lying in bed, and I just had the game on my laptop and was just quasi listening to it. But then I just started hearing what the commentating was, so I kind of like woke up, and I actually backed up because the way it was sounding was like it was an injury, so I just wanted to see what happened, and then I just ended up watching everything unfold.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a weird experience. Did you watch it at all? Were you able to see any? Or able? I don't think that's the correct word. Were you watching it?
I was not. It kind of hit at a weird time for me too, and I just happened to see the headline pop up on my phone, and so I turned it on after that to see what was going on, and I think they had pretty much abandoned the game at that point. But I thought, like, I think that the team should be commended for what they did to like protect him, and the little things that they did to make sure that he was set up for, like both surrounding him and then just little things to help make sure that he was rolled on his side and in a good position when the medical team got there. I think that's very commendable. But it's crazy to like, it really struck me and like made me think about my health and stuff. I'm just like, man, somebody who's clearly in good shape, not super old. I think he's 29. I think
he might even be younger than that.
Is he? Yeah. Anyway, yeah. He's
in prime of life.
Prime of his life, and just made me think, like, man, if somebody like that can go down and have a pretty serious scare. I mean, I think they said he was pretty much dead. Like his heart had stopped on the field, and
he was defibrillated. Like he was literally dead on the field.
Yeah. Certainly made me think about my life and my health and how crazy that is. And we'd kind of seen, I mean, I think as Sounders fans, we had experienced that a little bit with Dempsey having some heart issues, and it's not something to be taken lightly. And I don't think any athlete would put their life at risk to try to push through that if it was a decision of continuing to play or continuing to live. I think that he would not be wrong to choose life. I think even if he had to step away from the game, I think that it would be the correct choice. But it's just how close they were to having a player die on the field early on in this tournament is just crazy to think what could have happened, and just crazy to wrap my head around what actually did happen. And we don't have a lot of details about what went wrong or what was going on with him, and we may never know exactly. But very kind of sobering moment for people to watch and be. I think that the fact that the team was able to continue on and finish that game is commendable, but I wish they wouldn't have been put in that position, because I think in the moment you think, I can do this. We should play on for him. He would want us to play, but I think looking back, most of them are thinking that was a mistake. And I think when someone is in that sort of scenario, they're kind of in shock. So I don't think anybody on that team should have been making that decision for themselves, because I don't think you're really able to think clearly, and that's probably absolutely hurt them. And that's a tough way to go, to lose your first game. So hopefully they are able to bounce back. This is kind of the things that can rally a team, but it's also the kind of mental distraction that can hurt a team too, as we saw from the second part of that game. So I hope all the best for Eriksson. I think he's a former Tottenham player, but I think everybody can set that aside for the moment and just appreciate that he is it's a miracle that he's still alive, and that's the important part.
Yeah, I it's funny. I didn't realize, or it was amazing how much I was affected by seeing that and seeing those images. I mean, I've seen some pretty bad injuries. I remember watching we all know the Zakawani injury. I saw that live. I remember watching that live. I remember the Diaby injury against Sunderland, which was also another horrific, horrible injury. But there was something about this that really it put me in a weird headspace. Like I actually teared up at a couple of times. Like when I went to to Menace Brewing to go watch the 12 o'clock game, the Belgium game, and like I was explaining it, talking to a friend about it, and I literally started tearing up talking about it, and it was kind of weird because like it's not like I have a deep affection for Eriksson, like as you said, imagine he was a Tottenham player, and he also plays for Denmark, which isn't necessarily my favorite national team, but I think it really just brought home like the humanity of these games. I like, we have these ideas about players and we get very upset at certain players. We have, rivalries, but at, the end of the day, we are human, and just seeing someone literally die in front of your eyes, it's weird. And I'm still actually kind of mentally processing it. And I think I'm not going to come in with some hot takes because I, who am I to say whether the game should have been played or different things like that, or what the cameras should have been doing. But I really do hope that it's a time for everyone to remember that mental health is important, and that I hope that the more than whether or not the game was right to play or whether they're going to win a tournament or not, the Danish players, I hope, get the help they need, or the people to talk to that they need, because I think that's long term going to be a huge effect. I mean, you saw several of the players coming out crying like after the break, and you saw Schmeichel comforting Eriksson's girlfriend when they thought he was dead. It's like these are things I can't. Again, it's like it's not my place. It's their place to say whether they're ready to play or not. But I can't imagine. Like I was hardly ready to watch another soccer game. I can't imagine playing another soccer game or finishing that game.
Yeah, and I think like that can be a thing that people can rally behind. So I hope that's the effect that it has on the Denmark team, and that's something that they can play for him and try to win games for him rather than be distracted by it. And if they don't do well, and I don't know whether they would have done well with him or without him. I mean, I just hope that it's not something that's like, oh gosh, well, he was like one of their better players, and I hope that that's not like a death blow to their chances. I think like mental effects aside, I hope that that's not not going to hurt their chances, because I think people are going to definitely pay attention to the Denmark team, and I think they're going to earn some extra fans and some extra attention from this for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I think the entire, like everybody, like the entire soccer world on my social media feeds and the people are talking to were just so behind Eriksson that even like I said, I chatted briefly with one of my Finnish friends that was there at the game, and he said it was like one of the weirdest feelings to be there. Like it was odd because it was one of his most exciting moments of his entire life. He's been waiting his whole life for Finland to make a major tournament. Obviously risk COVID, spent a lot of money to get out there, was super excited. And then like when the goal went in, like obviously he celebrated, but he was also just kind of said it felt weird, like
Yeah.
it just felt off for him.
And that game was in Copenhagen. Is that correct?
Yes, that was in Copenhagen.
Yeah, I think on they mentioned on Arscast this week, just of all the places you could be to have that happen, a full staff of medical people. If that could happen anywhere, it could happen at any time. You never know what can happen with these heart things. So the fact that he was in a place where they had a staff and a defibrillator for that matter, like that's super key. And just you don't want to have that happen in front of all these people necessarily. I mean, if that had gone the other way and everybody had to watch a player die, that's devastating. But the plus side is that short of being in a hospital, that's maybe one of the better places you could be. So that's really kind of a blessing, I guess, if there's anything positive to take away from that.
Yeah, his friend of the podcast put on his social media, Fraser Pringle, have defibrillators at all levels of soccer when you're playing, and always have one of those around when you're doing any type of this activity.
Yeah, it made me think twice about getting some CPR knowledge. I don't. I could probably fake it, but I'd rather know exactly what I was doing if that ever came up, especially like with my kids and stuff. Like that definitely came to mind.
Oh yeah,
just having that knowledge would be helpful.
Yeah, there's definitely classes, and many workplaces will offer it at their buildings. As someone who used to provide CPR classes, most big buildings used to have it. So many inquire with your workplace whether they want to do it or offer the training, because I think it is a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well,
wow. Sorry,
I was gonna say we can move on to other things now and put that behind us. Hopefully he continues to recover.
Yeah, I was just going to say, moving on from that, because it can get a little dark.
Yeah.
Have you been watching any of the other games? Did you enjoy any of the other games so far?
I've caught bits and pieces, but really the only game I saw from beginning to end, because I knew you would want to talk about it, was the Spain-Sweden game. So that's pretty much the bulk of my Euro experience. I miss being able to like pop into a bar and watch games. Like I have to kind of like plan for it now. It used to be I could go on my lunch break at work or something, and there was a couple bars around I could watch games at. But now I feel I have to start making plans to catch some of these games in a bar with some people.
Yeah, like mentally prepare for it. But like those noon games, I was gonna say noon o'clock, which isn't a time thing, but those noon Saturday games are a perfect time to go hit up. I know several of the bars in Seattle are showing them, so yeah.
Yeah, I was contemplating the England game, but it was a little too early for me.
Yeah, I mean, well, the 6 o'clock games, I'm not even trying. Like, I tried to wake up for one of them. I woke up, put it on, and then I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just I'm gonna go back to sleep.
Bed.
There's no back to bed. The 9 o'clocks, what I have been doing is I have them all set for record, and if the 6 o'clock game sounds interesting, I'll watch it at the 9 o'clock slot, and then either watch the 12 o'clock or watch the 9 o'clock delayed and then the 12 o'clock. So I've been catching most of the games. And some of them I haven't. I found out the Switzerland Wales gate score, and I was like, you know what? I don't feel like really watching that. Even though we had Arsenal's own Xhaka, the only Arsenal player to be playing a game so far, featuring in that game, it just still didn't pique much interest.
I think the only other game I caught a good chunk of was the Netherlands Ukraine game. That was
a fun game. That was actually the best game of the tournament, to be honest.
I missed the I stepped away and came back, and Ukraine was back in it, and I was like, what the heck happened here?
Yeah, can't look away. I think it was like a 20-minute spell where all the goals got scored, and you're like, what's going on? That was good. Oh, and that Ukraine goal was great. It was right off the box. I forget the name of the scorer, but he was just running, and he just perfect little dip. So Ukrainian's second goal was a goal to watch. And then, of course, you saw the Scotland Slovakia goal, right?
Was that the long range one? No. Yes.
Yeah, that was the 50-yarder one.
Yes. Okay, I did.
It was from basically the halfway line. Yeah. Chipped the keeper. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't watched enough of it. Yeah. I'm gonna force myself to watch more this week.
Yeah, I mean, on our Arsenal front, it's been extremely uninteresting. Jacques was the only one to start, and I didn't watch the game, but from the reports, it was a Jacques performance, nothing too exciting. The other interesting news to come out of it is Tierney apparently has a little bit of an injury.
Yeah,
which is
I had heard that.
Always worrying. The commentators are saying that it wasn't. They expect him to play the next game against England, and it may have just been a very simple one, but that's the one downside of these international tournaments is you lose your player. So I'm hoping it's not too big of a deal.
Yeah, if it's a small thing that keeps him out of a game or two, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, rest is rest, whether it's from an injury or not. Like less mileage on those legs is probably the better scenario. So if he has to sit out a game, maybe that's not the worst thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've been playing these games for like almost 2 years straight. That's probably not a bad thing that he gets
At
some
some
rest.
point, your body is going to give out. It's inevitable. I'd rather it be for a small thing than a big thing.
Exactly. And we've seen the big thing, so very grateful that it's a smaller
right.
thing. But yeah, I mean, as expected, Leno didn't start, so don't have anything to talk about there. Saka was on the bench but didn't see any time, which, again, I'm of two minds. I want Saka to be happy and do well. It's always nice to see people do well, but I don't mind him getting a little bit of a rest.
I'm all for the experience, but not so much the mileage. Like let him be there. That's fine, but let's keep him as a bit player.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all the Arsenal news out of the tournament. Like there's not much else to talk about.
Yeah, maybe that's for the best.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to yeah. No news is good news right now. So
right, I'd much rather have that than injuries or anything else. I like Xhaka. How long is he going to be our player? He might be he's a Roma player by the time this tournament's done.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's another reason why I wasn't too interested in Xhaka. Other than I hope he plays extremely well and just pushes up that price tag just a little bit more.
Right. Well,
each goal he scores is worth a couple £1,000, right?
I think that's how that works. Yes, Moneyball. Well, do you want to? There was some. I don't know if the Sweden Spain game was the most interesting of all of them that I watched, but it is. It is like it is a team that is near and dear to your heart. So is that tell me a bit about what you're thinking of this team so far, because I think you're pretty strong on them going all the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, as I said before, Sweden's going to win the Euros. We all know this. It's a given. I will tell you that game was not good for my heart. That game was very, very, very difficult. I knew it was going to be a difficult game. I was under no illusions about what was actually going to happen in that game because, when you look on a paper, Sweden is definitely not going to match Spain in any way, and especially the Spanish pressing. Just Sweden doesn't have. If Zlatan was playing, you would have that playmaker that could get out of those situations. But Sweden just doesn't really have those types of playmakers that when three players are coming in at you at the high press that you can deal with, and that's how Spain plays. So I knew that's what it was. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was hilarious how upset a lot of people were with how Sweden played the game. They were just talking about how they were kind of being very negative minded, and I just think it's funny because that's, of course, that's how Sweden's going to play against Spain. It really is. If Sweden comes across another big team, quote unquote big team, that's exactly how they're going to play. They just really don't have the team to compete with that, and I've made my peace with that. And so when you watch a game like that, I will definitely take that 1 point. I will take that 0 goal because I think goal differential is going to be a huge thing in this tournament with the top third place teams going through.
Right.
I think it's luckily going to galvanize Spain to score more goals against other teams, which is going to make Sweden's life easier. And Poland losing against Slovenia is also not a horrible thing. So it's looking good. I definitely put on the Swedish audio over Twellman talking on the audio because Twellman is just an awful commentator.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, what you forget about other commentary to American commentary is that in Sweden, like it was mostly they didn't talk through most of the game. It was mostly silent, just letting the game play. And then when there was something where they had to explain what happened, like, oh, that was offsides, or oh, why this is why it was called, they talked. But like for the most of the game, it was just breathing. Whereas I feel like some American commentators feel like the need to fill the entire space with just anything they can talk about.
Yeah, I mean the idea of a color commentator is only good if you really have some insight, and I feel like um, some of it just feels like they're BSing their way through it. Like they make very generic comments to try to fill space, and it doesn't feel like they actually know these players. They're kind of making generic soccer commentary over the top of things, but don't offer anything in depth as to what Spain or Sweden are actually doing. So I think that's where a lot of people are frustrated because they're coming at it from a very neutral place, and that's where a lot of people are coming from who aren't necessarily, when you're an American viewer, you're, the commentators are kind of like the viewers in the sense that everybody's coming at it from a neutral standpoint for the most part as a non-European country. So I imagine Swedish commentators would have a lot more insight to actually offer if they even bothered to say anything. It sounds like that's not their style, which I think it's very. The American commentators are very American, and that you have to fill space, and anything else would be considered dead air. And to me, it's like even the I don't know what you call the play-by-play announcer. The stuff that they choose to talk about or not call or not talk about, I'm just like, what is the point of this? Like, either you say everything because I don't know all these players, so you should be like talking about everything, or don't say anything. Like it's just just filling the dead air doesn't really work for me either. It's not worth the BS that you have to listen through.
Yeah, definitely, and it's I put on the English commentary just for a second just to kind of see what was going on. It's just like when I had it on, they were spending more time talking about the upcoming Germany France game, which I understand is a much more exciting for the neutral game, but like I don't know. I feel like you should be concentrating on the game in front of you as opposed to what's going to happen, But I understand I'm also very biased, and not everyone's going to be as excited as I am to watch Sweden draw with Spain 0-0. So
what was your feeling going into that game? Did you feel like that was kind of what you thought would happen as far as them absorbing what Spain brought to the table?
Yeah, I mean, like my joke, Sweden going to win the Euros cap off. That game was the most difficult game in the group in reality. No offense to Poland or Slovenia, but like obviously that's the game that's going to be the most difficult. And as I said, Sweden has a limited team. There are a lot of those players aren't at the same caliber as and not the same caliber. It's just that they're a different type of player. There's not that creative for the most part, and we'll talk about a couple of players, but for the most part, there's not a lot of players that have that creative, creating something out of nothing spark. They work hard. They're very, very just workman like players. They work hard. They do their job. They know how to fit into a system.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're on equal footing, they can do some really interesting and awesome things. But when they're outclassed and when you have that type of pressing, it's the best thing they could have done. So is to kind of bunker like that. And I was expecting that type of game. I was expecting Spain in reality to put a 1 or 2 in. I didn't think it was going to get a runaway game, but I thought it was going to be a 2-0 to Spain was my real thoughts on it. But the other thing was Olsen, the best Dane in the competition, because he's actually Danish and transferred to Swedish citizenship. So
Interesting.
But the keeper had a great game.
I was hoping we'd see the Goose get in the game.
Yeah, did he make the bench? I was trying to remember if he even made the bench. I don't think he did make the bench.
I don't think he did.
And I'm always looking for the Goose. They did like Sweden over the last three-ish years since the last World Cup. Sweden hasn't really been putting Svensson in as much. I think there's a little bit of the MLS bias, which he went to the MLS, and I think that he falls off the radar a lot of times with the coaches. He comes in. He's definitely a bench player on this squad. I wasn't surprised not to see him on the bench. I did see him in warm up, so he was at the stadium dressed. So
Yeah, there was moments in that game though where I felt like they could have used somebody to help control the midfield a bit.
Oh yeah.
Not to say that the players in front of him were, um, were bad or anything like that. I think they would. He would have struggled, but I think that he does have that um, he's got a good heart tackle and could have disrupted a little bit more.
I think he would have been a great late game sub in that game. I don't exactly know what the coach was thinking. There were a couple of questionable decisions. The fact that they subbed off Isak in that game was very confusing to me. And the Swedish, I thought it was weird. And then the Swedish commentators were very confused by it as well, because it was like 68th minute. They subbed off the only guy with creativity.
Yeah, I was really surprised because it seemed like Spain was wearing out in that second half. And there were a couple runs that he made that were actually putting Spain on their heels a little bit. So I thought that he would get more opportunities like that and that they might plug in some more players around him to help facilitate that. But they went a different direction.
Yeah, I think they went complete closed shop. Their idea was that I think the thought behind it was that because it's always like a give and take. Anytime you are pushing forward, you are giving up something in defense. That's just like the nature of this whole thing. It's just like in boxing, when you punch, you do leave yourself open. And I think the coach's thought was, we just don't have time of day for this. Like we had our two chances to score, and that didn't happen. So we're just going to completely just close the door. And I think you saw the opposite of what can happen with the Portugal game today, with Portugal-Hungary, which is for 80 minutes, Hungary played that same type of thing against Portugal and held them to a 0-0 tie. But then you could see Hungary just like get the slight idea of like, oh, maybe we can score. And so they pushed up a little bit. They got a goal called back for VAR for offsides, and then Portugal won 3-0. And that's the danger when you're at that kind of level of a team, that it's probably better to take off your creativity and just stick to what you know. And then for whatever reason, nothing Spain was doing was going in. Like their players just they didn't have the shooting boots on that game, which I was grateful for.
Yeah, they I think it was the Twelman and company were saying that they caught Sweden happened to catch Murata on a bad day, but I've never seen a good game from that guy. Every time I watch him, he seems to have a bad day. So I'm waiting for when he can really blow me away. But it wasn't this game, and it hasn't been the other games I've seen him play either.
Yeah,
I know he's good, but not when I've watched him.
And then the other thing with Spain is that there's an axiom I always say, which is that possession without dangerous possession isn't much. And a lot was made of the fact that they like basically broke the record for some sort of passing thing. They had I think it was 85% possession, but you saw a lot of that possession was just kind of in their back half, just passing it between their center backs, passing it in the deep midfield, and it wasn't very cutting. There were a couple clear cut chances, don't get me wrong, but not more than you would expect from someone who had 50% possession,
Right. Yeah, in the early part of that game, I felt like it was typical Spain in the sense that they were controlling and probing a bit. But I felt like going into that second half, they were still in control, but just not really creating anything out of it. And that was just a lot of smoke, but no fire.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and the thing is, Sweden generally does play out the back. It's actually like Olsen is actually not that horrible at distribution, but they didn't this game. It was very interesting. Like you saw that they went for the long ball, the very low percentage, high reward types of things on offense, and even coming out from if they were in the back, they would just punt it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was on purpose. I think they were like, all right, we'll give you possession deep in your half, and we know it's going to take 30 seconds, 40 seconds to get anywhere near our box, and we'll do that all game long, and hopefully will hit you on the break, which they almost did twice. I mean, that Marcus Berg chance,
So
that could change things.
yeah,
And
it's so frustrating when you have stuff go off the post. It's that game of inches really stings.
And it's annoying because I think Isak probably should have taken the shot, but he was doing the correct thing, which is to pass it to the person that has a higher percentage of chance. And Marcus Berry, he just, it is one of those things.
It's interesting coming out of that game. It seemed like Arsenal fans were looking at Isak as a a potential player that Arsenal should be looking at, and I think that there are some rumblings that maybe the Arsenal were, but I don't know if it's anything but fan conjecture at this point. But I if Arsenal were in for a player, that's kind of the type of player I'd like to see them go after, and it's a lot different from what we have currently as far as the athletic profile. I feel like a couple of the runs that he was able to make, he just looked like he would be. He had the strength to take on players one on one, and the creativity to get around them. Unfortunately, it didn't come off in this game, but he's a player I'd like to see more of, and I'm going to be watching in this tournament because I'm not sure what he's valued at, but that's. I think his age and his skill level look like the type of player that Arsenal should be going after. Not that he's in a priority position by any means, but hopefully they're taking notice of that kind of play, even though it didn't come off in this game.
Yeah, and we did have a fan question from Joe Robinson about which Swedish players should we be signing, which I totally prompted because I knew I was going to talk about it. So thank you, Joe, for coming in and humoring me. And I think as we're talking about Isak, I think he's the type of player we should have been signing before the Euros. Mm-hmm. He's exactly the type of player that his profile, just from that game alone, is shot up, and his cost has shot up completely. He's been on the Swedish national team radar for a while. People are very very aware of what he's doing, and he's playing in the Spanish league. He's playing at Sociedad. His transfer fee coming from Sociedad wasn't that crazy, or going to Sociedad. I think it was a couple million. It wasn't that big. But if you've been following the Swedish national team, if you've been following him, these are inevitable, and I would take it with a grain of salt. But like, people are calling him the next Zlatan is the thing. I don't quite buy that. I don't think he has the same physicality. He obviously doesn't have the same stature as Zlatan, which I think is going to make him be a different player. But I think he is a talent. I think it's going to be a lot more expensive to get him from Sociedad right now than it would have been before the tournament. And even like it would have been better to pick him up when he was at Wilhelm II, I think was his where he was at before. Yeah, he was at Dortmund, but he went on loan to Wilhelm II, which Dutch league. I think that would have been the time when Sociedad bought him to really go for it. I think the other issue is that he reminds me a lot of Pepe, so it's a little bit of an overlap. Mm-hmm. I think it isn't a dire need, and you're going to be paying a decent amount for him when we've already paid $76 million for a player. I don't that fills very similar roles.
Yeah.
So would I like him on Arsenal? Quite a bit, yes. Do I think it's the best purchase? Probably not. It's just, going to depend on the money and what they can do. But as I said, I don't think we're going to be the only team going after him.
Yeah, the age is great. He's 21. He's valued currently at $44 million, which
has definitely gone up.
It's gone up, and I don't know that he's. I just don't know if that's where we're going to put our money in this window.
He's definitely not a finished product either. He's a project. He's a lot of talent, and you saw what he was doing against Spain, which is he can take on. On that Marcus Berg chance. He took on 3 players and basically beat all 3 of them. And that's not it's not a horrible defense, the Spanish defense. So there's a lot of talent there, but it's definitely raw. It's going to need some coaching. He's going to need some development, and he very well may not pan out. There's a lot of potential, but it's not a lot of definite at this point.
Yeah, I based on his age and what he can do, I think that we'd be better off putting our time into Martinelli and Balogun to really develop the players that we have put money and time into already.
But if you want a little sneaky tip on a player, I think who plays the same position, has similar talent that's on the Swedish roster, we unfortunately didn't get to see him play against Spain. It's Jordan Larsson. He's a 23-year-old striker. He is actually the son of the other famous Swedish player, Henrik Larsson, who's one of my favorite players of all time. And he has been doing really, really, really well. He's was on the youth team at Barcelona, but I think that was just because his dad was playing there at the time. He's on Spartak Moscow right now. He's made 55 appearances last year, or over the last 2 years for Spartak, which is not a horrible return. And I think we tend to lose players who play in the Russian league because it's not one that people follow, but it's not a bad league, despite Russia's national team. So I think he could be a player that if we're looking for a forward and you're looking for a good deal from the Swedish national team, I think he would be pretty useful, and I think you could get him for a fairly decent price. I don't know what he's on at Transfermarkt, but I don't think it's 44 million.
No, he's at 16 and a half.
So I think he would be a much more interesting signing. I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement because of who his father is, but it's like, getting 55 games at Spartak is not nothing and he's 23, so he's at that perfect age. So we'll see. He's going to be he's my hot tip for a young striker from Sweden if we want to pick someone up.
I like this this aspect of the Euros is getting kind of the shop window of all these young players and players you may not have heard of, but are, best in their country, or, at least trying to make their break into the bigger leagues, into the bigger soccer world. And it's interesting to see which of these players comes out of the tournament and makes that next leap to the next tier because of their performances.
Well, the next player I'm going to mention as a player that I think wouldn't be a bad signing for Arsenal is a player we've all heard of. And it's going to be a hot take. I imagine I'm going to get some feedback, but I'm going to say Victor Lindelof.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Zlatan.
Zlatan, no, please don't. That's a whole nother story. I would love to have Zlatan, but hated at the same time. But yeah, Lindelof from Man U, the central defender. I think he gets a lot of negative press that he doesn't deserve. I think he's gotten somewhat of a misinterpreted rep. And I think if we're looking for another center back coverage that has Premier League experience, I think you could do worse. I thought he played a great game against Spain, to be honest. And when I've seen him play for Man U, I think he's played fine. I think a lot of times people just like to pick on him because he's had a couple bad games in the past.
Yeah, I mean, he's 26, so he's the right age profile. And he's valued at 26 million as well. So much cheaper than some of the other options Arsenal are talking about. The Ben White rumor was circulating this week. I think he's been valued in the 40 million range. I'm not sure if that was pounds or dollars, but the idea of sinking more money into our center backs is crazy, considering the money that we've put into Saliba that we haven't even seen yet. But it's clear that they're interested in getting more depth of that position, trying to replace some of what we've lost in Luiz. So I'm not as familiar with Lindelof and how he plays out of the back. I think one of the things that they're definitely concerned about is the ball carrying and the play out of the back. So whoever we go after will have to kind of replace what Louise was able to do. So I don't think it's a matter of just having bodies back there. I think there's a specific profile that Arsenal are interested in, which may be why Saliba isn't necessarily what they're looking for. I don't know.
Yeah, and Lindelof definitely isn't. He's no extreme passer of the ball or anything like that, but he definitely has a solid defensive, which I think sometimes can get overlooked, that we want like everything all at once, but having a nice, just solid defender, which is what he does as a center back, is something nice, and I think that's why I would say it.
It brings to mind an interesting point in, I think one of the surprising things to come out of this window so far has been the rumors of wanting another center back or wanting another goalkeeper, perhaps. And I think the missing piece that they're looking for is that ball control and playing out of the back. Leno can do it, but he's not the best at it. So I think they would like to find somebody who is a little more comfortable playing out of the back and has better distribution with the ball at their feet. And yeah, same with our center backs. I think that's a key to getting that link up to, Party and whoever they find to partner him. That ball progression is really important, I think, in Arteta's mind, and having that consistently strong player, that strong distribution, whether it's at goalkeeper or coming out from the center backs, or I think he wants that technical ability at all layers of the team, so that if they get caught into a situation where a team decides to press them, they don't look as lost as they have in certain situations in the past couple of seasons. So I think that's going to be a key to whoever they go out and sign. It's got to be somebody who, no matter what the position is, they have to be able to play out of pressure and be comfortable on the ball.
Yeah. Do you want one last Swede, or are we ready to move on? I literally could go on for
I'll
ages,
take one more. Why not?
All right, we'll take one more who also is familiar. I don't know how many people are familiar with him, but it's Christopher Olsen. And why you should be familiar with him is that we've signed him before. He was actually on our youth team from 2011 to 13, and then he was also was technically on our first team, though he didn't get any starts other than preseason. He scored his first Arsenal goal in preseason with a cross from Rosicki.
Aha.
But I think it pretty much a dead post could hit a ball in with a Rosicki giving you a cross, because he had some amazing crosses.
Really did.
I just put him out there because he is a nice. I think he's going to be cheap. I don't have him on transfer mark, but I imagine he's not going to be breaking the bank as a midfielder. And I think he could be a good Xhaka replacement without being Xhaka, if that makes sense. Like he's not necessarily the biggest defender. I mean, a lot of people compare him to Freddie Ljungberg, but I think that's just because he's Swedish and plays midfield. That happens a lot with Swedes. But he has in a way, he reminds me of a Brad Evans. If you're a Sounders fan, he's a box to box, has some ability with the ball, but also has some ability with the defense. He's just that kind of all around type of player. And I think if we're selling Xhaka, if we're selling some of these players to try and make a profit to pick up a bigger name, I think it's a name we could pick up and he could do a job. And this is only hypothetically if we were actually interested in Swedish players.
Right. I do find it curious that a lot of the players that we've been linked to, or at least a good chunk in this last week, it seems like, have Premier League experience. I don't know how much one game counts for Christopher here, but it's I do think that there is, if you can't get a player with a load of if you don't go out and buy a player in his prime who has just a ton of general experience, I think there is a desire to go out and find players that have proven themselves in the Premier League. So I think that's going to be the toughest the toughest sell for any player, whether they're Swedish or not, is that if you're going to come from outside the league, it's going to be, you have a set of skills that we can't find here with the Premier League experience, or they're going to want to find somebody who has already established that they are capable of playing at this level and isn't going to take a year or more to bed in with the team in the league. Because if you can't hit the ground running, and I think that was the desire with Willian and any of these other players that we've gone after in the Premier League recently, is like hopefully hitting the ground and not having that build up time. But if you're in a true rebuild, then maybe there's room for more growth, more time. But going back to Saliba, I kind of wonder if that's part of the problem too, is like, yeah, he's good in France, but what are you going to do when you get to the Premier League? And I think that's a lot of like the good deals that you're going to see with these players in the Euros. They're going to look good in these different scenarios, but how do they actually play in their home teams, and how does that translate once you bring them into the Premier League?
Yeah, and I mean, not to go back too much to Isak, but I think he's like the hot property that a lot of people are talking about, and I think it's one of those cases where it's a high risk, high reward. Yeah, he could be the next Zlatan. He could be the next big thing. He has a lot of those pieces, but it's a $4 million bet or whatever. It's a big bet on definitely not a sure thing. And I think that was something that maybe Arsenal could afford to do 5 seasons ago. But I think directly after this last season, I don't think we can make those big bets anymore. I don't think we have the money or the will as a fan base to make those big bets anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's interesting to think about how the Xhaka situation comes to mind, because a lot of people are saying like he'd be fantastic in Italy because of the way that he plays and the style that Italy has kind of meshes really well. And I think Ceballos made comments that he's more comfortable in the Spanish league because of the way that he gets more time on the ball. There's the skills that will show up in the Euros don't always translate well into how the Premier League plays out. So it's kind of you have to find a way to read between the lines a little bit and find those diamonds in the rough that are like have quality skills that will translate well into the Premier League, and that narrows down the field quite a bit.
Well, I mean, it's in any of these major tournaments just inflate the value. I'm thinking of blanking on his name, Chilean that ended up going to Man U. I am so blanking on his name.
When you said blank, and it was like my brain went blank. Sanchez,
yes, Sanchez. We got him right after that World Cup, and I imagine part of his price was because he had such a great World Cup.
He was one of my favorite Arsenal players while he was with us, and like he had some great moments, but longevity wise didn't have it. And also I think like had some of the similar problems that Pepe has worked through, in that you cannot be a one-man show and make it work in the Premier League. I think it's possible at moments to do that, but it's very difficult to take the team on your back and try to do everything all on your own. The skill to having longevity in the league is to find a way to make the most of the teammates around you.
This is going to be a little bit of a deviation, and we're actually going pretty long, but I wonder if that's the reason why Pogba or Zlatan never really had great success in the Premier League, is because those are two players that tend to take teams on their shoulders, and maybe it's something that's a little bit more difficult to do in the Premier League.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, but it just seems like that the more you try to do on your own, the more teams tend to single you out and target you. Like, and that happened a lot with Sanchez, where you could just take him out. He wasn't a big body. It was, you foul those players out of the game, or you frustrate them to the point where they kind of realize they can't do everything that they want to do, and they tend to kind of, maybe not Zlatan, who tends to get frustrated and get better, but it's for a lot of players that can do that in other leagues, they get to the Premier League and kind of hit a wall, I think. I don't know if there's if that's a universal rule, but yeah, I think there is something to be said for the better players being guys that can figure out ways to get the most out of the players around them, or facilitate players around them. You've got the De Bruyne's who, flourish because they are also good facilitators.
Definitely.
Okay. Actually, our Sweden conversation was much broader than I expected, and quite enjoyable. So I'm pleased with how that went. We'll have to come back to them after their next game.
Yeah, I mean, I could literally make a whole podcast about Sweden, but I know that that's a very niche interest, so I won't bore you too much with it. And I tried to broaden it out and at least involve Arsenal in the conversation a little.
Yeah, I tried to interject some Arsenal things in there, so I think we did all right. Let's take a quick break. We've got, I think, one more question that we can hit from you guys. Another one from Joe Robinson. Thanks, Joe, for doing your job and giving us all the questions this week. Love it. So we'll come back from the break and answer Joe's next question and see where we go from there. So stick with us. All right, welcome back from the break. And now we hit our last question of the day from Joe Robinson. What national team, past or present, do you think best represents Arsenal in their current state? This is a tough one.
I have an immediate answer, and then when I read this, I had another answer that I'm trying to remember what it was. I had two for sure, just right off the top of my head. But what about you? What do you got?
Oh gosh, I was thinking of the French team from a couple World Cup cycles ago that just completely imploded.
But the things, I don't think the Arsenal is completely imploded in that way. That was a very specific.
That was very dramatic.
Yeah, there's like walk-offs on the bus. That was the South Africa 2014 World Cup.
Right. Yeah, they're not that bad. That was just the first one that popped into my head, and I was like, yeah, I could make a case for Arsenal kind of being less than advertised, but maybe not to that degree, because I think there was high expectations for that French team, as there always is, but that was a pretty big disappointment in the way that things played out for them.
I'm going to throw out, and this is the easy answer to the first thing that came to mind, which is the current Germany team. And the reason I say it is that I think it was a team that won a lot, which we used to win a lot. It's won the World Cup before. We won the Premier League. It is a team that has held on to its manager far too long, which I think might have been the case with Wenger, as much as I loved Wenger. It is a team that is failing to realize expectations, both not only this tournament, but in the World Cup in 2018. You have a lot of issues with trying to figure out which players to hold on to, which players are creating issues. There's an Özil on the team. There's a lot of interesting parallels. I think the fans are getting tired of it, which I think also speaks to Arsenal. So I think that's my first answer, and I'm trying to remember the second answer. I had a second fun one too.
I think there's been some Brazil teams that have fallen well short of expectations that come to mind. All the right pieces on paper, but then when it comes to the actual on-field product, just not finding ways to put it together.
I think the Brazil World Cup team comes to mind with that.
Yeah. But tough. I mean, you got to have a pretty good encyclopedic knowledge of the the World Cup teams. But I think
No,
of the big disasters more than I think of the big successes, which maybe says something about my current feelings on Arsenal.
right. For me, it's Faded Glory is the teams. I would say up until this first game, I would say Italy, because I think Italy is another team that had been resting on a lot of their laurels and the fact that they had been winning, but they actually looked good this this first game at least.
Yeah, I don't know if Turkey's really the team to test your limits against. I don't know. We'll have to see how they play in their next game, which I think is, I'm trying to remember,
today or tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Turkey Wales, is that correct?
Turkey, Wales, and I'm trying to think of who Italy's playing though.
Italy's playing Switzerland with
Yeah.
Should be featuring in that game. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people liked Turkey as a dark horse, but they just fell apart, and I don't know what it was.
They looked like they were struggling to just get passes together. Like it seemed like Italy was just a little too much pressure for them. Like they were doing their best to keep control of the ball, but not really executing very well, even when they had possession. So I don't know if that maybe Wales is more their pace. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
I mean, that actually should be a pretty good games, or pretty good games. It should be a pretty good game.
Mm-hmm.
That I think they match each other well. It'll be interesting. You know, Turkey's supposed to have a really, really good defense. I haven't watched a lot of Turkey live. Is that the other team I wanted to maybe compare was just maybe not this current Belgium, but Belgium. Oh no, it wasn't Belgium. It was Netherlands. Netherlands is another team that I was thinking would be an Arsenal team, which is again historically great. There's and with the Netherlands, you have the whole total football, the classic era of the 70s, the Cruyffs and all that, but have failed to live up to their potential over the last couple years and the last couple tournaments, and have these players that should be doing great on paper, but just for whatever reason don't click on the field and have a tradition of offense. So somewhere between the current Germany team and Netherlands over the last 3 tournaments.
Yeah, they're definitely a team I'm keeping an eye on in this tournament. They're a team I've enjoyed quite a bit in the past. They're a team I've kind of I root for France. I root for Netherlands typically in these tournaments. So when they were kind of in their dark period, I was pretty surprised and sad, and it was definitely not what was expected. But watching a little bit of their game the other day, they've got talent. There's no doubt about the talent that they have on the field. It's just a matter of, can they put it together? So I'm curious to see if they have what it takes, because for a moment there, it looked like they could have fallen apart to Ukraine, and that was scary for a minute, but they found a way to get it done. So
they did find a way to get there, and then they're a fragile team. Like, I think they're a team that have the potential to make it to the final, and a team that can get knocked out on the group stage.
Mm-hmm.
They're full of talent, and they should be playing better than they are, and so they'll be a fun game to watch. I don't like their coach all that much. I don't think what's his name, De Boer is he's a good coach. I don't. It sounds very harsh to say, but I just
former Atlanta United coach.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't rate him.
Yeah,
and so I think that can be an issue as well when it comes down to the wire.
I will say when Atlanta signed him, I was like, man, that is the kind of coaching signing that I was kind of like hoping for with MLS, to kind of like bring in these potentially great soccer minds and then see how they fare in this weird sandbox. But that experiment made me second guess that completely. I'm like, maybe we should just stick to former MLS players, because they seem to understand something that these other foreign coaches do not.
I mean, for the most part, foreign coaches that have no MLS experience. Again, going down a rabbit hole, but those types of coaches have historically failed in MLS, and I do think it has a lot to do with MLS's weird. MLS's finances are weird. I think that's really what it comes down to. Is team construction is so different from anywhere else in the world that it's hard to wrap your head around. And Miami's fallen afoul of that recently, where they somehow ended up with 5 designated players, which is how you would it's how you would construct a team anywhere else in the world. You want to get the best talent, why not get Matuidi in? But it doesn't work that way in MLS. And so I think coaches that are heavily dependent on bringing in the right talent to do what they want to do are going to have a hard time. Whereas if you're in the MLS and have been in a while, you know who the players are that are the cheap substitutes.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the Sounders have done a really good job of getting the the cheap substitutes, the poor man's whoever,
Yeah, it seems like quietly there's been like an acceptance that that's the way to go, is to bring in coaches that have a general understanding of how to get the most bang for your buck, and not necessarily how to the ones that manage egos or have lofty philosophies. I think you have to, at the end of the day, just have that grittiness to find ways to win no matter what, and that's not something that a lot of the great soccer minds necessarily have right off the bat, unless they have a group of talent that can kind of grind that out for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're really just, I mean, it's because there's going to be a certain amount of these players that are MLS players, whether they're American or not. You need a good, probably half your squad to be MLS veterans of some sort or another. And they're just not getting the same soccer education that you would get from around the world. And so to try and put something too complicated, it's just not going to work under this current economic climate for MLS.
Yeah,
when you get rid of the salary cap, that'll be a different story. But
yeah, I think the teams at the top level have difficult time with like true tactical flexibility. Like, you're lucky if you can get one set of tactics that works really well week in and week out. But some of these, I would imagine DeBoer is one of those coaches that was like, okay, I've got all these things that I want to do with this team, and we're just gonna put all these ideas out there and hope that some of it sticks, and it just doesn't work. Like, simple is better when it comes to MLS. It's kind of like the brute force tactic of just get through games, grind it out, let your players do what they need to do, and not try to get too fancy with it.
That being said, and you're probably going to clip this audio out, and when Holland or the Netherlands win the Euros, play this at the beginning of the thing. But I just do not rate De Boer as a coach. I don't think he's I don't think he necessarily fits into that world-class coaching range.
No, maybe not. I mean, I think he's in a lucky position that he has a good crop of players right now that may be able to overcome some of his shortcomings.
Exactly. But as I said, we'll probably clip this at the end of the Euros, so people can hear how wrong I am, because that is a hot take.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, I think that should do it for us this week. That's plenty. Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about a whole lot of stuff that wasn't Arsenal this episode.
We tried really hard to rein it into Arsenal, but there's just no news. Like, I don't get me wrong, I like to talk about Arsenal, but there's no real concrete news. So
yeah. If you're listening to this and you want us to talk about something specific to Arsenal or specific to a transfer, send in your questions, because that's really how we kind of zero in on the things that you want us to talk about. So if we're not hitting those marks, let us know, and that's how we'll right the ship here. Yeah. But there's not a whole lot of concrete things to talk about. We're not going to talk about a lot of these far off transfer rumors, because at the moment there's not a whole lot of concrete things, and there's only things I don't want to believe, like the rumor that Odegaard is going to stay at Real Madrid. Those things I don't want to know about. I only want good news.
I mean, and I know we're wrapping it up, but I mean, I think we've been both talking about the Odegaard for a while, which is I'm pretty sure he's staying at Madrid, and that's just not. It's not a rumor thing. That's just what
it's more of a fact.
It's more like what is looking like happening as far as what they're doing.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's okay. To me, I almost want to just hitch my wagon to the next greatest thing. Like, I want to find the next Odegaard.
Isak.
Right. Sure. That guy. You know, I always like the potential of these unknowns coming into Arsenal and finding a way into the into our hearts
until they break them.
Yes, until they shatter them. But yeah, we'll probably have a lot more transfer talk after the Euros. So between now and then, send in your questions, or we'll just continue to talk about the Euros until this tournament's over. So that's okay too.
I can talk about Sweden all day long.
I'm surely going to watch more games. Like I said, I've watched bits and pieces here and there, so I need to sit down and try to watch more games front to back.
Yeah, I mean, coming up, if you're looking at that Denmark-Belgium game, should be interesting. England-Scotland is a must-watch. That's the Friday 12 o'clock game. That just for the derbiness of it.
Mm-hmm. You said Denmark-Belgium. Yeah, I'm curious about the Italy-Switzerland and the Turkey-Wales games tomorrow for sure. But Portugal, that game. Portugal-Germany coming up.
That's gonna be a nice game as well.
And then we
of course Sweden-Slovakia.
Sweden-Slovakia. I probably will watch that. I got to stay on top of this Sweden stuff.
Yeah, definitely record it. It's one of the 6 o'clock games, and I'm probably going to record it.
Yeah. Well, lots of stuff to keep an eye on, but we'll see if some rumors start swirling about some more of these players. Like if Isak, if the rumor really starts turning towards Arsenal, there's definitely been some talk, but nothing concrete. So we'll keep our ears open for more of that.
And I say I'm not into rumors, but send me all the Isak rumors. I will love it.
Yeah, let Tim dream. Let him have some hope of a true Swedish player on this team again. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thank y'all for listening this long. If you've stuck with us through all the Europa League talk, or Europa League, excuse me, Euros talk. I don't know how many times I slip Europa League in there, but if I did it before this, I apologize. Continue to review and subscribe if you have not done so already, wherever you pick up your podcasts. We'd love to get your reviews, and just click that subscribe button. Especially if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, smash that stuff several times if you can, with several different accounts. We need your subscriptions so we can get some more eyeballs on our beautiful faces, because I know that's all you really want. That's all you really come for, is to look at this. But if you don't like looking at us, we've got the podcast wherever you pick up those sorts of things. Follow us on Twitter, at WofNLondon, or westofnorthlondon@gmail.com. Those are two places you can send in your questions on a weekly basis. And if you are feeling spicy, send us a voicemail, anchor.fm/westofnorthlondon/message. Can't say it all that fast. That's where you can send us a voicemail, which we will gladly put on our next episode. So send in questions at any one of those places. We'd love to hear from you. And if you like our theme song, go check out Bobcat. It's bobc.at. That's their website, and you can find their latest album, No Course to Follow, right there. And check out any news of making a comeback post-COVID here, because I'm sure they are itching to get out and play some shows. So that would be the place you can find that information. And I believe that is it for this week's episode. So as always,
see you at the next Gunjo. Oh, holstering it.